Hello, my name is Stephen Upton and welcome to my From the Air series. In this short film we're going to be looking at an area of the Western Front known as Les Eparges. We're just southeast of Verdun, and on this map the green shaded area is the German held territory and the red the French. At the end of 1914, after the German retreat from the Marne, the front line settled down here into what is known as a salient. That's territory projecting into an enemy-held territory, and this is the St. Mihiel salient. The northern hinge of this salient is Les Eparges. And in 1915, the French tried very hard to pinch off this salient, and the crucial part was Les Eparges. This is the high ground on the northern hinge. The right-hand end of this ridge where the arrow points is point X. In the middle, the highest part, point C. And we can see the black line there now is the French trenches. Because it's high ground, it was very suitable for tunnelling and detonating huge mines. And as you can see here, dozens of them. So as the French infantry attacked overland, trying to take this ridge through 1915, they never quite made it, and it wasn't until September of 1918 that the Americans finally captured the whole of the ridge. As we take off now from the air, although they've planted a lot of trees over the area, we get a very clear view of many of these mine craters. What we're looking at now is directly above the high point of the ridge, looking towards the Woevre Valley, low ground here that was entirely in German hands. A little bit round to the left, and we're looking in the direction of Metz. If the French could get and capture this high ground, look at the view they would have had over the German rear areas. They could have pinpointed supply routes and dropped shells on them at their leisure. What we're looking at now is directly towards point X, which is one end of the ridge, and in the direction of Metz, which would be over towards the horizon. And as you can see, this ground really stands way above the low-lying land in front of us there. There's an avenue of trees which leads towards point X, and all down the left-hand side of it is almost overlapping shell craters and mine craters. There's one there now. The French would have been attacking up a gradient from the left, and the ridge drops off steeply down to the right, but the high ground always remained in German hands till the very end of the war. And you can trace no man's land simply by joining up the dots almost, crater after crater there. The French lost tens of thousands of soldiers, particularly in the fierce attacks of April 1915. Look at the size of that crater. If you see the size of trees there, you could drop a bus down the centre of that crater and lose it. See the width of the road in comparison to the diameter of these mine craters. You can see shell craters in the ground, they're relatively small. But these mine craters are massive. See that one there now, just to the right of the road. It's difficult to get a depth perception from these videos, but there's three there, almost overlapping, and the road runs in between them. And many more there, running all the way along this ridge. It was absolutely vital that the Germans maintained control of this high ground. Very little is actually said or written about this. There's one or two famous books written by people who took part, but unfortunately one of the best ones, I can only find a copy of it in French, and as I don't read French, it's not much use to me. It'd be very handy if somebody would translate it. That's point X directly below us now, right at one end of the ridge. That's what the French desperately tried to capture, because look at the views they would have had. All that land there is behind the German front lines. amazing views for them. As we pan round, we're moving round towards the direction of Verdun, the high ground there towards Verdun. And we're looking right along the ridge. You can actually see between the trees a road that's there now. That is just running down what would have been no man's land for most of 1916, 17 and 18. And we're flying from point X in the direction of point C. There are several memorials on this high ground. The point X memorial. At point C there's a memorial to the 106th French Infantry Regiment. And there's also a memorial to French engineers, for it was the engineers that dug all these tunnels and placed these mines. And we're flying with point X just behind us, moving down to looking at some of these big craters. Just look at the scale of the cars there and the size of the craters. When I say you could drop a car in the bottom of one, it would just disappear. Some of these craters are 60 metres across and 30 metres deep. And of course now we're seeing them after 100 years of erosion. At the time they would have been steep, very deep, and the bottoms filled with water. We can just see here the lip between two craters and also the outlines of a trench there that was dug directly between the two craters. The French would have been just behind us and the Germans just over the other side where those trees are, and these craters in a no man's land. Crater after crater running along the ridge on this high ground. And of course during the war and immediately after there would have been no trees. It would have been a lunar landscape, overlapping shell holes and these massive craters. To be able to film it from the air at that time, it would have looked absolutely desolate. See the car in scale, it gives us a good scale on that crater. This area is open to the public free of charge all year round, but if you do visit it, please respect it. It is the whole area is a war memorial and also a graveyard. And whilst there is a French cemetery to one side, which we'll visit shortly, there are still in the ground that thousands of bodies, both French and German, of the missing. There are also many thousands of unexploded shells along the Western Front. Probably many millions along the whole front, so areas like this, be very careful. Come across anything that looks like a shell, leave it alone, don't pick it up. People are still being killed. This is a good view now along the ridge. Unfortunately, because of the trees, it obscures the craters. That village there was in German hands throughout the war and would have been shelled very badly as well. But as you can see from the views how important it was for the Germans to hold on to this. That's point X directly below us and the memorial. If the French had managed to pinch off the St. Mihiel salient, it would have freed up a lot of the routes through to Verdun for supplies, which in 1916 would have been incredibly useful for them, because of course the Germans launched their major offensive with the aim of trying to reach Verdun the following year after the battles here. This memorial below us now is the one to the French engineers, many of whom their remains still are in the tunnels underground. It's believed that there's at least one mine still underground that hasn't been detonated. For whatever reasons it didn't go off at the time and it's still there, but this is not uncommon on the Western Front. There are dozens of unexploded mines. You can just see in the ground now the outlines of a trench. We're actually running parallel to the front lines, French to the right, Germans to the left of that road further up the ridge. But you can see right at the centre of our view the outlines of a trench. It's now just a shallow depression in the ground, and here this is where they've been recently excavating it. I was wondering if they were going to open up the trenches here for the 100th anniversary of the battles here, but it doesn't seem to have been so. We're looking towards Point C, which is just off camera to the left, and as we've panned round now, this is Point C. You can see how high it is, and another memorial to the French infantry here that took this high point. Imagine this hill being completely devoid of any form of vegetation, never mind trees, but just thousands upon thousands of overlapping shell holes, and then between the front lines these huge craters, great long line of them. We're looking, this is Point C, and just beyond it, at the top left, is Point X, so we're seeing almost the entire length of the ridge. And that's a view now along the whole ridge from Point C to Point X. As we pan to the right, that road is just behind the German front line, and the ground behind it would have been probably their second line defences. As we move round, there's the village now, Les Eparges. At the far end of that straight road is Point A. The village of Les Eparges remained in French hands throughout the war. And just below those trees now, at the bottom of the ridge, is the French cemetery, which was created at the time and dramatically improved in 1958. And in this cemetery are graves of just over 2,100 French soldiers and an ossuary in the middle with the remains of 852 more. This is a double row of graves, so for each cross you're seeing, there's another one just behind it, facing the other way. This is the price of war. When generals decided they want this high ground, it's the infantry that pays the price for it. If you've enjoyed this short film and found it informative, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, for I will be posting more over the coming months. In fact, next week I'm going to be filming at Verdun itself. My film's about the First World War, and those that took part in it are a tribute to them. As a member of the British Legion, one of our mottos is, never forget. So for all those combatants, whether they be British, French, German, wherever they came from, we shall remember them. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this film informative.